This podcast was made possible through your donations, prayers, love, and continued support.
I think by now everyone admits that the world, our planet, societies all over the globe, we're all going through some very strange things. We're going through a time which we never saw coming, a time which, frankly, we were not even prepared for. Hopefully by now, if you're a listener of Fighting Together, if you're a follower of this podcast, hopefully you have kind of got the gist of it, that this podcast is a place where we can fight through all that chaos together. My name is Tafadzwa. Sit back, relax, as I take you through another episode of Fighting Together.
Are you tired of consuming the same old content? Bored by the lack of variety? Stick around. Maybe this podcast will help.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
I am so glad you stuck around because I have something I want to tell you about. Maybe you already know about it, but if you are like me, you weren't aware, and it's quite exciting. It's something good and it's something free. I mean, how many times does that happen where you get something that's both good and free? That doesn't happen a lot, and I'm very excited because I just stumbled upon this by complete accident. I don't know, maybe I was meant to find this, maybe I was meant to tell you about it, and hopefully maybe you're meant to log on to it and find some free goodness. I have to state it that I'm not sponsored to talk about this product. I just bumped into it, and I think it's fantastic because by now some of you already know that Fighting Together is trying to create a positive space on the internet, something which is not easy to find as the internet grows more and more and more toxic. It's not easy now to find places where you just find happy or positive or uplifting content, but this product is focused on that. It's a product called Good Internet. Now, I have to, before I broaden my my definition of this thing, I'm going to focus primarily on Zimbabwe. So, the thing about Good Internet is that if you are in Zimbabwe, and I think it's available all over the world, but I was only able to test it from a Zimbabwean perspective. So, if you are in Zimbabwe, what you do is you type in ZW. I think each country has got its own like extension. With America, it's US. With South Africa, it's ZA, and so on and so on. So you type in zw.goodinternet.org. After you enter that, you land on a free website. It's like it's a free portal where you can consume. Right now, there's a radio show that's there. There's let me try to quickly browse through it. There's a children's story section where kids can get storybooks of some sort, and there's some videos that are there. I have not consumed or played any of the stuff there, but a place like this being made available for free, it's it's something we need, especially during the time we're going through, and not even just because of COVID. Even after COVID, we need more platforms like this because the internet in some countries is a cheap thing. In some countries, it's considered a basic human commodity. But in other countries like Zimbabwe, the internet is very, very, very expensive, especially compared to the salaries that people have, And I'm very excited. I'm excited that because I've got a Econet line. Econet is the biggest mobile network provider in Zimbabwe. Because I've got an Econet line, I can access Good Internet for free. I can consume all the content here for free. Check it out. I think different countries will need specific mobile networks or specific extensions. I don't know much about it because, believe it or not, I literally stumbled into this less than an hour ago. But since I am an advocate for goodness on the internet, I say to myself, how can I not talk about this? Yeah, so check it out. Talk about it. Spread the word. Goodinternet.org. But I think you need to add a country code of some sort. Like for Zimbabwe, it's zw.goodinternet.org. Next thing you know, you're on a free platform. Yeah, and if it's not free, I guess you need to switch to a very particular mobile internet provider for it to be free. I don't know what's the deal with what provider you need to use in which countries, but for those in Zimbabwe, if you use Econet, which is what most people use, I guess that's why they went with Econet. If you use Econet, you can consume the videos, you can consume the stories, you can consume the radio shows that are on the platform for free. Let's take a little break. After the break, I've got some more stuff I want to talk to you about. The aim of this podcast is to try and brighten up your day. After the break, after this short break, I'm going to talk about some of the things I've been noticing when I go out in the morning. Because early morning, I take my dog for a walk. I put on my mask. I put my dog on his harness. And we go out for a walk. I've noticed something you will want to hear.
You're listening to Fighting Together. Stay tuned to hear the rest of that story.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, and depressing news. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
We're getting closer and closer to the time that I'm going to dig into the Bible and read some pieces of scripture from the Bible, but we're not yet there. Right now, I want to touch on something before we talk about the things I've been noticing. Like I said before the break, I want to talk to you. I want to kind of tell you, put you in my feet and take you through a verbal tour of some of the things that I've been seeing when I take my dog for a walk. And I'm quite excited. It's not going to be that long, it's going to be short. But before we do all that, let me dig into the New York Post. There's an interesting article I found in there, and it reads, "More Japanese millennials in general are living alone, making the work environment their main source of in-person socialization, according to a think tank association." Now, essentially, what that's talking about, it's essentially saying more and more people, it's talking particularly about those in Japan, but all over the world, more and more people, more and more young people are living alone, which means their only type of interaction that they are having with people is at the workplace. Obviously now, because of COVID, some people are no longer able to go to those workplaces. They're now working from home, which is increased the loneliness that the world is experiencing. Yeah, it's really tough. But that's not where the story ends. I will end this segment by touching on what Japan has done to tackle this. After the break, I will then dig into the whole what I see when I take my dog for a walk story. But before we get there, I'm going to end this particular segment by saying that Japan then went on to appoint a minister of loneliness. That's how crazy, that's how unforeseen, that's how unique this whole pandemic is. It's so different from anything we've ever experienced that Japan has gone as far as to appoint a minister of loneliness. And I'm reading this from the New York Post. You can check it out and read the entire article there about who he is and why they felt it's necessary. But I think if you are anyone who's going through what the world is going through, you won't ask why on earth Japan found it necessary to appoint a minister of loneliness. After the break, after this next short break, I'm going to go into the story you've been waiting for, which is me just talking about the things I've been seeing with my own eyes. Why do I add these kind of stories into the podcast? It's because I don't want to just be some robotic podcast that talks about things from the internet. Okay, I shouldn't do that. I want this place to be somewhere where when you come here, you will feel an actual human connection. Well, as much of a human connection as a podcast can give you. So the next little bits of dialogue are going to be based off my own personal experiences. So if the prospect of putting yourself in the shoes of a Zimbabwean who is walking his dog in Chitungwiza excites you, if that excites you, then hang in there. After the break, you get to put yourself into those shoes.
If you are enjoying this podcast, then I think you are going to love our website. Visit www.dailypodcast.show.
This podcast was made possible through your donations, prayers, and continued support.
My name is Tafazwa, so this whole podcast is coming to you all the way from Zimbabwe. I'm doing it in a town called Chitungwiza. I'm going to be talking about the walks I have in the morning and the changes that I've seen. I have walks with my dog early in the morning before most people have woken up. So I'm going to talk about that and the changes that I've seen before COVID and primarily now during COVID. But before we go into that, I want to let you know that this is a podcast that I am very excited about. Yeah, it's something that's going to keep growing and I can never thank you enough. There were people who sent in donations when I had a crowdfunding campaign so that I can purchase some portable battery-powered equipment. The equipment is necessary because we can increase the quality of the podcast and we can set it up in a manner that allows for interviews or multiple people to be in a single episode. I've done an episode where I was with my brother, but the sound isn't so good because we're sharing the one microphone and our system is not set up to interview or to have more than one voice. Anyway, I'm very excited that the crowdfunding campaign was a success and the equipment that we crowdfunded for is on its way. Let's pray that it gets here without any hiccups, without any challenges.
If you are enjoying this podcast, then I think you are going to love our website. Visit www.dailypodcast.show.
Now, for the story. Early morning when I wake up and I take my dog for a walk, I want to kind of put you through all that. During that time, a lot of people will still be sleeping, and when I started doing it, the only people you would see were people who were going to work. I'm talking about probably like 3 years ago when I started doing it on a regular basis, So rewind 3 or 4 years ago, I would take my dog for a walk, and the only people I would see were people going to work with their suits on and their work briefcases and so on and so on and so on. Occasionally, I would see a car going past, and in some cases, I would see these mini buses that would go house to house, picking up school children. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I would see. People going to work or a school child sitting by the gate, waiting for the bus to come and pick them up. And, I think I've pretty much rounded up the mornings back before COVID. But now, something interesting has happened since COVID. Or rather, let me go back to when COVID started. When it started, when the lockdown started, obviously the people who were going to work vanished from my morning walks. I no longer saw them. And I then noticed something different. There were now people who would go out and start jogging. Chitungwiza, it's not your upper class society. And I'm not saying that jogging is an upper class thing or something, but it's just that in my community, people lacked the health awareness to get out and jog or to invest in a pair of running shoes. I know I used the word invest because depending on where you are in the economy, depending on where you are socially, or depending on the country you are, things like running shoes or running gear and so on, all that kind of stuff that's seemingly very basic is not so basic. It can be quite a luxury in certain parts of different economies, even within a single country. You can go to suburbs where everyone is up and running, and each day they wear a different running kit. On Monday she wears something pink, on Tuesday she wears something lime green, Wednesday, people can have a fashionable thing going while being healthy, I guess. But then in certain parts of certain economies or certain countries, that's something which is considered for the elite. Not to say that health is an elitist thing, but just, I don't know, take it as I've said it. I don't know how to phrase that. Yeah, so here in Chitungwiza, in my own community, I actually remember that before COVID, in the walks that I would do, I used to do longer walks before COVID. I would walk for almost an hour and a half, 2 hours or so. And in those walks, I would actually remember that there was one particular girl that I would bump into who would be going out jogging. And even the way she did it, she would have a kit on, and it's like the very specific running shoes, and the running pants and so on, and the sports bra on, and she's got an iPod, and it's all plugged onto a wrist not a wrist, but rather like on an arm right under her shoulder with a strap on that kind of holds the iPod in place. And she's got a music going on and a visor on, like one of those hats where your hair is out and it's bouncing, and she's running. And I remember that she was literally the only runner I knew of. Not to say he was the only one, but obviously Chitungwiza is a big town. There are a lot of people in it. But within the radius of my walking area, within the timing of my walking, because obviously there could be other runners who used to run before I was awake, or others that would run after I had finished my walk. So I can't speak on behalf of the entirety of the town, But within my radius and within my time zones and so on, she was literally the only runner I knew. And I actually knew which days she would run. Not because I was stalking her, but when you do something day in, day out with the rhythm, it kind of, your pattern kind of feeds into other people's patterns. Where, let's say you take the bus. When you're on your way to the bus, you kind of know that when you pass this gate, there's going to be 2 children that are sitting there waiting for their school bus. When I pass this shop, the shop owner is going to be sweeping outside this shop. Certain things start to fall into place such that when you pass a certain shop, you can ask yourself, wait, where's the guy who's always sweeping here? Am I late? Am I early? What's going on? And for me, that one jogger became one such person who I knew to say, there is someone who runs in Chitungwiza. Now let's switch over to COVID. During COVID, when COVID began, I started to notice something. I remember that in the early days, so this is 2020, during our first lockdown, I actually started noticing that there was several fathers, not a lot of them, but there were some fathers who were now going out and running with their children, Like you'd see a dad, one particular dad I remember, he had like 3 daughters with him, and the daughters are like 9 years old, 11 years old, 7 years old, that kind of age range. And he would be out there jogging with them, waiting for them and just doing this thing with them, and they're laughing and they're talking. And I said to myself, where am I, because I know my community. And not to say those things don't belong in my community, but sometimes we get stuck and caught up in the routines that our life turns into, such that it was so bizarre to see something so simple as a dad jogging with his daughter. or in this case, his daughters or his son or whatever. And they were just there. But now, because it was the first lockdown, because it was the first time that the father was no longer going to work, and it was at that particular time, I think we were 2 months into our first lockdown. Like, he didn't do it. Like, many of these fathers, many of these husbands, many of these couples, they didn't get into jogging immediately when the first lockdown kicked into place. No, they started jogging after months of lockdown, So during the first days, I presume that people went, yay, lockdown, I don't have to go to work. Let me sleep in. I have more hours to sleep. After a while, they started going, okay, lockdown, we might be in here for a while. Let me try and do something to keep myself occupied. Hence the jogging and all that stuff, So it didn't happen immediately, but after a while, people started jogging. And I was amazed because I'm used to walking during these morning hours all alone, and suddenly people are now walking their dogs also. Yeah, like, not to say there weren't other people who walked their dogs before, but now more and more people started looking for leashes and also walking their dogs. Where I was used to seeing 1 or 2 other people walking their dogs, now I can say in a single walk, on some days, I can see 5 other people. It's like a huge change. Like, wait, what's going on? For me, I've always walked my dog, so I can actually see the transition that happened. I can see the change that happened before and after, And I don't know. It was something that I never saw coming. Yeah, and in it all, let me also describe some of the groups of people I see jogging. But before, I have to kind of describe the attires and the changes I've seen. In the first days, people were very focused on, I'm going to get these shoes, and then I'm going to get this sporting bra, or I'm going to get that, or I'm going to get the pants, or this and that. It was all about fashion and so on, Those were in the first lockdowns. But as COVID continues to keep us pinned down in the lockdowns, I've now noticed that people have now sort of drifted away from the fashionness of it all. Now people are like, I will work with whatever I have, with whatever I've got, It's no longer an elitist thing where one goes, okay, I don't have running shoes, so I'm not going to run. People are now just fitting into whatever is comfortable. They've now stopped wearing gear that looks very specific to exercising, Now I see people jogging and they're just wearing some old t-shirt that they happen to have. Whereas before, any joggers you saw would make that effort to say, I'm going to a fitness shop and I'm going to buy the kit, because how can I run without the kit? That used to be the mindset, but that has changed now, because now people are like, I need to just get out of the house with whatever I've got, and hit the road. Yeah, that's, I won't go much into what I've seen people wear, and I'm just an observer who's quite fascinated by the transitions and the evolution, the social evolution that I'm seeing during my walks. And now that I've done the fashion bit, one of the last things I shall now add in, I guess, would be the groups. I've seen different groups that do all this running and so on and so on. I've seen groups of boys who are like 4 or 5 of them, and they are all like under the age of 12. And all 5 of them look to be from different houses, like to say they are now teaming up and saying to each other, tomorrow morning, we all get out of our houses, meet up and run together. And then alone, without any adult with them, they're just running and enjoying the fresh air and stuff, And I've also seen couples where it's clearly some form of husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend who also have now started to kind of take that on. Some more seriously than others. Yeah, but I've seen couples also take that on, and I've seen combinations of like different husbands and wives whom before COVID would probably not have had the time because either all of them would be at work or one of them would have been at work. I've seen different combinations of such couples out there in the morning together. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm quite fascinated and continue to just observe as it all continues to unravel with each passing lockdown, with each passing week. Whew, this has been a long episode, but like I said, the reason why I do these random recordings is because while you're sitting alone wherever you are, in an apartment or I don't know where you are, in some country, you could be in America, you could be in Netherlands, you could be in New Zealand, South Africa, Zambia. While you're there, I don't want you to be too alone. Hopefully, I shall be able to make this podcast something that's consistent and hopefully something that's also uplifting and I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I blanked out there for a bit. Yeah, I think it's because this particular segment has been quite long. We're almost on 15 minutes. I hope you enjoyed me just giving you a picture of what it's like here in Chitungwiza. I don't know how things are where you are, but for a brief moment there, you got to be a Zimbabwean who witnesses, or is rather continuing to witness, the transition and transformation that's happening within the society here in Chitungwiza. Thank you so much for sticking around. The upcoming segment shall be our last segment of the day. I have really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you shall continue to check out the previous episodes of this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like the Facebook page, and bookmark the website. Hey, so we are nearing the end of today's podcast episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. And please, 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 please like the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/fightingtogethervideos. Once you like the page, you'll be able to get all the episodes. Bookmark the website. It's www.dailypodcast.show. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's going to be linked somewhere. Yeah, I'll have to link it because you need a certain number of subscribers, you need a certain number of followers before you can customize your YouTube link. So I can't just give it to you because otherwise it's youtube.com/y7hpplxvy. So I can't customize that link until my channel has grown. Yeah. Anyway, I've also made an effort to make a presence on Twitter. So the Twitter account is mostly kind of going to have Shona samples because I want to have, Twitter allows you to have 2 minutes 20 seconds long videos. So I want to have things that are 2 minutes long on Twitter, but I will have them mostly in Shona so that the local Zimbabweans who are on Twitter can be aware of the podcast and they can join us on the Facebook page. They can join us on the different platforms, the website and the YouTube channel. So yeah, if you are able to understand Shona, then you can also check it out on Twitter. The handle is @dailypodcasting. So that's it. Now, the next segment is going to be a parable. I'm going to read the parable in 2 languages. The reason why I do that is because I want to kind of have content out there that's also in Shona, because Shona is a language where not so much content can be found on the internet. You can't find a lot of Shona content on the internet. So I'm fighting to try and contribute, into that void, that shortage. So Shona, English, those are the 2 languages. When I go to one of the either or, stick around. That way you get to hear the language and I don't know. Eventually, like I've said in the previous episodes, eventually there are going to be some lessons where you can also learn Shona on the Fighting Together website. So at some point in time, if all goes well, you won't have to skip over the Shona bits of any of my content. That would be the day, eh? Yeah, let's keep hoping, let's keep praying that everything goes well. Now, we need to take a short break and then jump into the parable of the lost sheep. After that parable, it will be the end of the episode. The next hymn, the next voices, the next song you're going to hear, all the voices are voices of members of the Church of Christ. Those voices, they are singing a hymn, they are singing a song which essentially says, isn't it time you repented? Isn't it time you came to God? I'm paraphrasing here. I have no way to do a proper word for word translation. But at least with that, you've got the gist of what they're saying.
The following song and other church hymns are freely available for download on www.churchofchrist.co.zw. Get your Bible ready. The next segment has now begun.
And now for the parable of the lost sheep, which shall be the last segment of the day. Thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. And if you have, like the page, subscribe to the channel, and keep supporting us. Luke chapter 15, verse 1, all the way to verse 7. Now, the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Before I now jump into the Shona, I just want to kind of point out that such Bible verses, such parables, sometimes get abused or misused because they can be used from a perspective of, oh, look, Jesus also dined with sinners. He had no issues with them, And that wasn't the objective for him to go dine with them, end of story. Ultimately, his objective was to joyfully put them on his shoulders and carry them away from sin to his homestead, away from the sin. Yeah, so he had to go where they are, but to take them out of it. A lot of people kind of miss that whole point. sometimes, And even the Pharisees also missed the point because they are looking at him and thinking, what on earth is he doing? Yeah, so the change, the repenting is something that's also crucial. It's not a case of, well, he dined with them, he loved them, he really liked them. In fact, he hung out with them. His goal wasn't to hang out with them. It was to lift them, put them on his shoulders, and take them away from sin. Now, I shall read it in Shona, and I have really enjoyed having you here. I hope you've also enjoyed listening to this podcast. My name is Tafazwa, and before I read in Shona, I want to remind you again that this is Fighting Together. Our website is www.dailypodcast.show. Let's quickly take a break, and then we have the Shona reading.
The splendor of a king, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. It trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God! Sing with me, how great is our God! And all will see how great is our God.
If you are enjoying this podcast, then I think you are going to love our website. Visit www.dailypodcast.show.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
Ruka chapter 15 ndimadiki yekutanga. Zvino vateresi navatadzi vakanga vaungana vose vakamukomberedza kuti vamunzwe, asi vaFarisi navadzidzisi vomurayiro vakagunun'una vachiti, uyu munhu uyu anogamuchira vatadzi uye anodya navo. Ipapo Jesu akavaudza mufananidzo uyu akati, ndianiko pakati penyu kana aine makwai 100, rimwe racho kana rarasika, asingasiyi makwai mapfumbamwe namapfumbamwe kumafuro, achindotsvaga gwai rarasika kusvikira ariwana? Uye kana ariwana, anoritakura pamapfudzi ake nomufaro agoenda kumba. Ipapo anodana shamwari dzake navavakidzani pamwe chete, agoti kwavari, farai pamwe chete neni, nokuti ndawana gwai rangu rakanga rarasika. Ndinoti kwamuri, saizvozvo mufaro mukuru uchava kudenga pamusoro pemutadzi mumwe chete anenge atendeuka, kupfuura pamusoro pavakarurama 10 namapfumbamwe vasingatsvaki kutendeuka. Well, I think I did a decent job of reading the Shona. Yeah, Shona is not an easy language to read, primarily because it's not because the words are difficult. It's actually an easy language to write, but we don't get exposed to Shona literature enough for us to be verbally comfortable with reading it out loud. So, yeah, there might be a few hiccups here and there, but I did a decent-ish job. Thank you so much for sticking around all the way up to the end of this podcast episode.